Duck burger. Stove's not quite hot enough. I like the temperature on the stovepipe. 18 inches on the stovepipe, the thermometer to be 325 degrees. It's about 90 degrees in here. So my thermometer on my stovepipe says 300. That's all right. These Muscovy duck burgers with onions and green pepper with seasoning. They were seared on the grill, and then they were processed in jars in a pressure canner. So they go in a wide mouth pint jar. 4 burgers will go into a pint jar stacked on top of each other. Process the same as you would any other meat. Like I said, I am only heating them through because they're fully cooked. And I grabbed whatever was closest to my hand. And it was this old-fashioned, look at that. I don't know if you can see that or not. It used to be my grandfather's. So I've got all the cannon juices in there from the meat. And we're just going to heat them through. It is so hot by the stove. Boy, your ancestors, when they cooked on the wood cook stove, you bet your bippy they were warm, folks. It's pretty hot cooking on a cook stove, a wood cook stove, or just a wood stove. It's very hot, puts out a lot of heat. So I'm going to let that warm through. And as you can probably see, right over here, this is where I season my cast iron. So there's a little ring there. This here, I'm not sure if you can see this right here. That is an old, I don't know if it's cast iron, metal, but it's an old iron. They used to put that on the wood stove, get it nice and hot, and they would sprinkle water on whatever they were ironing, and then iron their clothes. Now this here is pretty warm. This here is a cannon lid. Right there, it's just a canning lid. When I am cooking on the stove, if I just want something to warm up and not cook, I'll put trivets. I call them trivets. I use them as trivets. Put them underneath the pot that I am using. It lifts them up about a ½ inch so things do not burn, doesn't get overheated. This right here, right there, that pot is where I keep my hot water, and I've got 4 of those cannon bands underneath that, because if I held this pot, put this pot on top of the wood stove, it would boil. It would just boil. So I ran out of light, so I've got my flashlight, my headlamp. I'll give you a closer look. Probably the battery is getting low. It's probably what that is all about. So that won't take long to heat through. And again, I'm using this. It's like a 1.5 foot long spoon. It works. Whatever's handy. You don't need a spatula to turn burgers, folks. You don't. You just got to keep it away from the edge of the frying pan. That's all. Now, if you've ever canned hamburger or burgers, the trick is, again, to make them into patties, season them however you want. This is just onions and green peppers and salt and pepper, probably. That's all I've got in there. Maybe some garlic. And then I form them into patties using one of those cannon bands, the small lids, the small bands, and I form the patties. If you use anything more, they won't fit in the jar. So, and then can them like you would any other meat. Put them on the shelf. You get hankering for some burger at 7 o'clock at night. These, can you see that? Even if that juice wasn't in there, see how juicy that is? That is so juicy, folks. It's not tough. It's not rubbery. It's just really, really good burger. Now, one of those burgers will be a serving, but I'm having two. Gotta remember, I'm trying to heal. And I believe when you are trying to heal your body, your muscles, your bones, you need extra protein. So I double up on my protein. And yeah, that's really good. That is really good. So welcome to how I cook and prepare my meals. A lot of times I'll have a smaller pot on the stove on those cannon bands, and I will put a pot of soup right on there and let it simmer all day. I'll put carrots and onions and potatoes and a meat and some spices and some. I also can my own broth and all of that. So I'll just, whatever I'm cooking, I've got turkey broth, I've got chicken broth, I've got pork broth, I've got beef broth, all from the cannon process. So I jar them up, run them through the canner, put them on the shelf, and when I make soup, I just put whatever I want on. If it's chicken based, I'll put chicken broth in there and just let it simmer on the trivets. And it works, folks. It works. I can leave the house and be outside and come in and get a hot bowl of soup. I also make bread on the stove here, a pan bread. But that stove has to be going a lot more. I like to get my stove pipe temperature up to 350 to make pan bread. And for burgers, if they're raw burgers, then I like to have it at least 325. But where I'm just warming this up, they're ready already, folks. And in the winter, when the fire is going, yep, I do. I use paper plates, folks. I do. And I want all those juices, so I'm going to turn them one last time. Put them right on the paper plate. Burger's just falling right apart, folks. It's very good. And that right there, that would make a nice gravy if I had the energy to do it. So I'll just take that off the stove, put it on a cooling rack that I've got over on the counter. Good food, good living.